Welcome back to my channel, The Unseen World. I'm so glad you're here, because today we're diving into one of the most exciting and creative skills you can learn, photography. Have you ever heard of the Pareto principle? It's the idea that about 80% of the results come from just 20% of the effort. And the cool part is this principle applies to almost everything, including photography. Today, I'm going to use that idea to teach you 80% of photography in about 15 minutes. This isn't going to make you a master overnight. Becoming a truly great photographer takes time, practice, and curiosity. But by the end of this video, you'll understand the essential 20% that will get you most of the way there. You'll not only start creating beautiful photos, but you'll also know how to fix them when things don't turn out the way you hoped. While I'm learning something new, I always like to start with the simplest possible explanation. I'll even say, explain it to me like I'm 5. Once I understand the basics, I can build on them and go deeper. That's exactly how we're going to approach photography right now. Simple, clear, and powerful. Let's start with one of the first things I set on my camera in any situation: ISO. ISO controls how sensitive your camera's sensor is to light. Think of it like your camera's night vision. A low ISO number means your camera is less sensitive and needs more light, while a high ISO means it's more sensitive and can capture more light, even in darker places. Now, you might think, why not just crank the ISO way up and make my photos bright all the time? Well, there's a catch. The higher the ISO, the more digital noise or grain you'll see. This shows up as little specks, discoloration, or artifacts that make your photo look less sharp. That's why the golden rule is keep ISO as low as possible while still getting a well-exposed image. Here's a quick example. I shot the same scene at different ISO levels. At ISO 100, the photo is super clean. At 200 and 400, it's still clean. At 800 and 1600, you start noticing a bit of grain. At 3200 or 6400, it becomes more visible. And just for fun, I tried 12,800 and 25,600 on a Sony A7 R2. Still usable, but noticeably noisy. Cheaper cameras usually struggle with noise above ISO 800 or 1600, while more advanced cameras can handle ISO 3200, 6400, or even higher while still producing clean images. That's one big reason camera prices vary so much. Better cameras handle low light better. A simple ISO 10 feet, bright sunlight ISO sata. In the shade, ISO 200. Indoors, ISO 400 or 800. In very dark places, maybe 1600 or more. Next, let's talk about shutter speed, which controls how long your camera's sensor is exposed to light. Imagine a window shutter. Open it briefly, and only a little light comes in. Leave it open longer, and a lot more light enters. Shutter speed is measured in fractions of a second. Something like 1/1000 of a second is extremely fast and freezes motion. Something like 1/30th of a second is slower and can capture movement or create motion blur. Fast shutter speeds are perfect for freezing action, like a person jumping or a bird in flight. Slow shutter speeds can create beautiful effects, like smooth waterfalls or light trails from cars at night. But slow shutters also mean anything moving, including your own hands, might blur the image. That's why, when shooting handheld, a good rule is to use a shutter speed faster than your lens's focal length. For example, with a 50mm lens, try to stay faster than 1/50th of a second. Some quick examples: shooting sports, try 1/500th of a second or faster. Portraits or everyday scenes, 1/125 to 1/250 usually works well. Shooting a night scene with a tripod, go as slow as you want, even several seconds, to let in all that beautiful light. Now, let's move on to aperture, which controls how wide your lens opens to let light in. Aperture is measured in f-stops, like f/1.8, f/4, or f/11. This setting does two very important things. It affects how much light enters the lens, and it controls the depth of field, which is how much of your image is in focus. A low f-stop number like f/1.8 means the lens is wide open, letting in lots of light and creating a shallow depth of field. That's how you get those dreamy portraits with a beautifully blurry background. A high f-stop number like f/11 means the lens opening is narrower, letting in less light, but keeping more of the image sharp and in focus. Perfect for landscapes or architecture. Aperture is one of your most creative tools. If you want soft, blurry backgrounds for portraits, use something like f/1.8 or f/2.8. If you want a nice balance of sharpness and light for everyday shooting, try f/4 to f/8. And if you want everything in focus, front to back, go for f/11 or higher. A wide aperture is also helpful in low light, but remember, the wider it is, the shallower the focus, so nailing your focus point becomes more important. Now, these three settings, ISO, shutter speed, and aperture, work together to control your photo's exposure, which is how bright or dark the image is. Together, they're often called the exposure triangle. Each one influences exposure, but they also affect other aspects of your image. ISO affects noise, shutter speed affects motion, and aperture affects depth of field. Photography is all about balancing these three. If you slow down your shutter to let in more light, you might lower your ISO to avoid overexposure. If you narrow your aperture for more depth of field, you might need to increase ISO or slow the shutter to keep the exposure balanced. And if you raise ISO to shoot in low light, you might be able to use a faster shutter speed to freeze motion. Once you understand how they interact, you gain full creative control over your photos. Here's my advice. Experiment intentionally. Spend time adjusting one setting at a time and watch how your images change. Try different shutter speeds and see how motion looks. Change the aperture and notice how the background changes. Play with ISO and see how noise appears. Learning photography is really about building intuition, and that comes from hands-on practice. Pay close attention to light, too. Natural light is your best teacher. Shoot at different times of day and notice how the quality of light changes. Early morning and late afternoon, what photographers call the golden hour, often gives the most flattering and dramatic light. Even just paying attention to where light falls on your subject can completely transform your photo. And after you shoot, take time to review your images. Look at the settings you used, think about what you like and what you'd change next time. Every photo, even the ones that don't turn out, is a chance to learn something new. So there you have it, the essential 20% of photography knowledge that gets you 80% of the way to great photos. ISO controls how sensitive your sensor is to light. Shutter speed decides how motion is captured. Aperture shapes depth of field and light intake. Together, they give you full control over how your image looks and feels. Master these, and you've built the foundation for everything else. Composition, lighting, editing, storytelling that turns good photos into unforgettable ones. Now it's your turn. Grab your camera and start experimenting. Don't wait for the perfect gear or the perfect moment. Start with what you have right now. Because every time you press that shutter, you're not just taking a photo. You're training your eye, sharpening your skills, and building your creative voice. And that's how great photographers are made. If you found this video helpful, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to The Unseen World, and turn on notifications so you never miss a future tutorial. I'd also love to hear from you. Drop a comment below telling me which of these settings you're most excited to practice first. Until next time, keep exploring, keep experimenting, and keep capturing the unseen world through your lens.